I am so excited to be here today for folks who are either listening right now or will come back to this later on. If you haven't been to or experienced a BBB before, really what this is about is as Rob said, it's a reoccurring program featuring Black writers in conversation followed by Q&A. It's really what we really look to do is have a vessel of exchange. We want to bring Black writers to our communities and our communities to these writers to learn more about their sources of inspirations, what things were, part of their sort of formative development, et cetera, et cetera. And then we just get all random and chat. So I'm super excited today. This guest I've been wanting to get on for a good while now. He joined us as part of the um, poetry festival that we had out in San Jose a little while ago, where we brought out some of the Black poet laureates. But I wanted to really get a chance to sit down and chat with Dasan. It's been a good time. It's good to see you, brother. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again as well. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. We rocked together a couple weeks ago over at Big Ears in Knoxville, Tennessee. If you would have asked me any time in my life if I would ever be in Knoxville, Tennessee, I'd be like, for what? But great experience and great seeing you after so many times and being here live, well, at least electronically live with you. But look, you always got things moving and shaking, moving and doing things. Why don't you tell us where you're hailing from now, right now, where you're talking to us from today?
Yes, I'm in Durham, North Carolina. I'm a North Carolina cat, born and raised in Raleigh, and adopted by Durham.
Nice. Um, I want to, and that's and the reason why I want to throw that out there because I feel like that's like very instrumental in sort of who you are and how you work and things of that sort, which is funny because anyone that I talk to from that neck of the woods, like if there's a flag to be flown, folks are flying that flag. So I love that sort of that dedication, that commitment to that area, to the community.
Mhm.
But I want to jump in first with the first line of your bio was and I do this to you all the time, dude. This as a self-described introvert. One things I've always admired about you is your humility, but let flowers be given where flowers need to be given, right? You're an accomplished cultural leader and poet. You've been on NPR News, TV One's Verses and Flows. You've been on documentaries. You're an educator, a slam poet, a poet laureate, a writing fellow with the Center of Community Change in Washington, D.C., and many more. I could go on. But with all of these accolades aplenty, what do you feel like at this point you're most proud of?
I think the thing that I'm most proud of is to be able to say that I helped create capacity here uh,
Hmm.
in North Carolina. Just being rooted here. I was encouraged early on once I got started to leave, which I think a lot of artists on this side are encouraged to do. And I stayed. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is having done that, the poets that I know I've had a chance to be able to kind of create some room and space for and to be able to put some money in their pockets. That makes me very happy that the kind of social and kind of work and sweat equity capital I've built here has allowed me to do that.
Wow. So I'm still in that create capacity because that is a fantastic way of I think talking about it and wrapping that around. I've been in a number of different poetry and sort of art communities, and as it should, people come up in the game, so to speak, get successful, but then they move away and they do their thing. And I'm okay with that because there's always needs to be this sort of generation of talent. But I think when that happens in droves, I saw it in LA, right? Like something hit and a ton of people kind of left. And it left this real big gap, I think. And so the fact of like staying and again, giving back to that and creating capacity, I think is super huge. So again, applaud you for that. But is that something that's hard to do? Like,
It
you want to
is.
fly, you know?
It is. And it's also hard to do because in order to make it work, you have to show up and you have to be in rooms that you wouldn't otherwise have to be in. You have to
Mm,
show up and sit, you have to show up at meetings, you have to collaborate, you have to sit and vision and plan. And like there's another level of work on the other side of things
mm,
to be able to stay rooted at home, especially when the market isn't as large, and that's the case on the South, unless you're in Atlanta, that's about as comparable as we have in the South. Otherwise, you have to kind of start to really make connections with organizations and institutions that are in your city or in your state, and sometimes it's not the most welcoming place
mm,
for us. Um, and it can be a difficult road to kind of get up to speed, build trust, build understanding, to feel like you are able to kind of demand and draw some lines.
right.
Um, and not everybody understands what it is, So staying home not only made me a better artist, but it also made me an arts administrator, right?
Mm,
Because that was required for me to make this work and for me to have a quality of life. Because the starving touring gigging artist thing was never that didn't make sense for
mm,
me.
yeah.
Um, Coming from a working class Black family, like my like no, we taught you work and you handle your responsibilities, you pay your bills. If you working and you can't pay your bills, then you're doing the wrong work.
Yeah.
So like that doesn't make sense to my family,
Yeah.
which is bigger than like they never cared about me being an artist, which is one of the things I never had to fight because nobody really had a concept of what that is.
Mm,
What they did care about was, are you able, whatever you're doing, are you able to do what we taught you to be able to do, which is take care of your responsibilities? If you're doing that, we good. We'll figure it out.
exactly.
Whatever
Exactly.
that weird thing you're doing
Yeah.
is, as long as it works, you happy, cool.
Exactly. Oh my God. So you hit two major pieces there. One is and a question, and when you said, being in these rooms and difficulty with these rooms, was the difficulty around the fact that folks didn't understand art, or was the difficulty in the fact that, the sun done burnt you a little bit more than some others?
Both,
Mm,
depending on the room.
right, right,
Because
right,
sometimes the rooms are full of folks who look like us and you still struggling. And that's where it's like, oh, y'all don't get this.
right,
Y'all don't know, y'all don't understand.
right.
And just my discipline, y'all don't get this at all. Because art is an accent. It's a thing that's supposed to happen, but you don't really understand what it means or what it
Mm,
takes or the experience that should be created around it. Okay. And then
right,
I'm in another room and it's like before we can get to that conversation, okay, got it. Microaggressions and passive aggressiveness. Okay, I got it. Cool, no
mm.
problem. Let's just sift through this real quick so we can get to what we're supposed to be talking about.
Yes. And it's we laugh, but I think it's so fun. I mean, it goes into like the whole code switching thing to a certain extent, right? It goes into like how we have to be so many different personas in so many different spaces, just as a regular, forget the art, right? Just as regular Black people in the world. But then you layer this other thing on top of it, it's sort of like like I said, I've been in rooms trying to ask for grants, and I get home and I'm like, I used my poetry for evil. Like, I feel like my soul has been taken out because we need to be in these places where we can get those funds to help out. The other thing that you touched on was this idea of this struggling artist thing, and I mean you've been in the scene so long, and I feel like there's always been this like underlying like I'm making things happen because I go to these different places and I stay on people's couches, and I was always like, I don't know that like maybe early days and for the camaraderie and things like that, right? But I've heard people say, you ain't really a poet unless you got to a city and the only way you could get home was to sell your books. And I'm like, that sounds like bad planning, so I don't know. So I'm glad that you brought that out as well because yeah, we get this thing about the starving artist and stuff like that, and that's absolutely real. But that doesn't mean that that has to be the category if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Scott Wood, I saw a live from Scott Woods, an amazing librarian, organizer, and poet. Um, but he was talking about this, and I used to always tell young poets this, like this dynamic between full-time and professional. And really jazz musicians were the one that really kind of really hit me because they operate in a world where we don't really know them,
Mm,
but they're able to move, play, contribute to records, put a record out, win awards, to do all the things, raise families. And I sat with some elder jazz artists, and they were like, the perception that the way we get presented is not how we actually live our lives.
mm,
This kind of romanticized image in movies and things like that. But we raise families, put kids through college and all of this. And I'm like, yeah, we don't know who the chart topping jazz artist is unless, like, we don't know these folks.
right,
But they also they don't glorify that grind, right?
right.
Like, if I can teach, I can teach. If I got another gig or whatever, but like I still play my gigs. I am not, like we're moving in a way that is completely different, but because we're professional artists, right? Like the work that we do is of a quality, and the way we work and the way we move is we move as professionals, even
Mm,
if this is not what we do full time. And that I was like, we, there was this period of time where everyone kind of was racing towards this idea of being full time. And I'm like, we're racing towards a thing we don't understand, and I can't race towards a thing that I don't know how that looks. I need somebody to tell me how to, or tell me the truth.
right. First.
Because I heard some bias, there were some folks telling people, but you won't tell them, they won't tell them the truth. Like,
Right.
tell me the truth about what this thing looks like. And otherwise, no, I'm going to work to be a professional at this thing because I'd rather supplement and complement in my life and be able to maneuver and do and grow and continue to feed back to my art than to commit to being full time. I Especially at a certain age. Now I feel like, my students, my mentees, get it all in. You're young, live life. This is a way for
Mhm.
you to see the world. Like you said, meet people, make connections. You'll have memories that you'll carry with you for the rest of your life. But towards what end? Like, what's next? Like, how are you growing, and how is this growing with you? And I just, for a while, I didn't see it. And so I was like, I can't.
Yeah,
That just don't work for me.
I hear you. Indeed. I was lucky enough that, I had sort of been the writing introvert in so I had my career going on, and then I jumped into the space because I know me. I like sneakers and I like I like stuff. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'll get into this, but this other thing needs to still happen. So no, I do appreciate that, and it's something that I challenge because I can't have that conversation with everyone. People get real into their feelings, and I'm not saying it's bad about you. I'm just like, what's the North Star? Anyway, so look, the other piece is I love comics, right? And I always um am interested in like these folks' creation story. So what's yours? Like what in life led you to being a writer, to being a poet, to doing the things that you're doing?
um, well, it's funny that you talked about this other life. Is sort of part of how this happened. Um, writing for me was a personal outlet. I grew up as an only child. I'm my mom's only, my dad's oldest. So, but they were high school sweethearts when they had me. They were never together. So, um, I grew up with a young mother, and I'm the oldest. My mom's the oldest child on that side of the family, so I'm the oldest grandchild on that side. So, just everybody trying to figure out to do with this new baby ain't around. So, like, my curiosity got fed. They were always giving me things to do, and writing just happened to be one. I had a good teacher. I always say I got tested instead of medicated, and
Mm,
like, oh, he needs to be challenged. And that's why he's disruptive. So I got moved into accelerated classes and had a teacher really geeked out about poetry, and that's how I started writing. But it became a personal outlet. What happened was I got tricked into going to an open mic because we were out young looking for girls. And that's where we heard there was some fly, there were, so at the set. So we pulled up through a monthly joint and they were like, yeah, we got a weekly joint we do too. Me and my cousin was like, word. So we went through. He knew I wrote, but I didn't tell anybody. And I was a big hip hop head. We used to cipher and all that. So
Right.
when I went to the set, it just so happened that there were folks coming back home from college who had grown off and became writers. So I'm meeting people I know, as well as new people who came to town to school from New York and from Cal. And so I'm meeting all these writers, and then I'm meeting people I know, and they're like, "Yo, you write?" And I'm like, My cousin, of course, because we out trying to impress. He's like, "Yeah, you do." I'm like, "Bruh, stop." So they convinced me to get on the mic. And what happened is going back and hanging out at the open mic. It was a real bohemian set. It was a Jamaican club. It was like blackness. And there were elder organizers and freedom. Like it was like a real particular black scene. It was like that kind of open mic. But what happened is I was working, had me a nice little corporate supervisory role job I had got. I was making good money, so I had a chance to kind of like once I started finding out where spots were, I was like, oh, I'm jumping in the car, I'm driving to VA and all the folks there. I'm driving to DC, then I'm like, oh, let's go up to New York. So I'm driving so I'm young, I'm in my 20s, I'm making decent money. I got laid off.
Oh.
And I worked for a company where that's pretty common. And I got laid off, and the market at that time, it was right around 9/11. The market was tight, everything was crazy. And I hadn't finished undergrad. And they were like, we can't get you this money. Like the market's too tight. I'm like, what? So how did my origin story is I needed to be able to finish my degree, but I needed a flexible schedule. And the only folks that would do that were arts organizations. So I started with a theater company and then worked doing youth work and doing some youth programming while I went to school. And when I got done, I never went back to corporate because
Mm.
I had kind of like, there was a new path waiting for me. Like there was folks willing to work with me. And I said, let me just try it for a few years, let me see what it is. Um, but it just kept rolling. And so I graduated, I walked into an open mic in 99. I got laid off in 2001. I graduated 2000, I went to school 2002. I graduated 2004, finished. I moved to Durham, was doing youth programs and developing programs, and what I'm saying, because I got my business, my undergrad is in business, so I'm moving, and
Oh.
I like logistics. I'm moving, I'm meeting people. 2006, I had a choice. I was working with this organization, this rural development organization. They were creating a position for me, and it was going to be my path back to corporate and project management. They were going to groom me to replace one of their project managers. I was an office manager, project assistant, and running things for them that way administratively. And then one of my former professors called me and said, I got approved for you to a residency for you at your alma mater. I convinced them that it would be good for the English department to have an African American male in the department. At that point in time, the English department was full. Honestly, everyone was a white woman
Mm.
department. And so she saw the benefit, got them to approve it. They had never done anything like that before. And that's how I got here. Because that was that thing. It was like, here's money, here's your
Right.
path back. You've now got the degree. And right before I signed the contract, I got the call. And she was like, we got approval for the residency. It was like June, July. She's like, we got approval for residency. We're ready for you to start in August, this fall semester. And I was like, what am I doing? And less money. But I was
Yeah.
like, let me do this.
Yeah.
And I've been rolling ever since. So that's the origin story. It was like, so I had there was two paths
Right.
before I got here that were on the table. One got taken away from me, and the second one I had to turn down.
Yeah.
Uh, but much like you, I had already got to a place where I was like, there's a way I want to be able to live, and I
Right.
I want to be able to move.
Right.
So
Uh,
that's always, I that's
yeah.
yeah. But that's it. That's the origin story, man. I had kind of, 3, 4 year period of just kind of trying to figure out where I was, and I put a lot of effort to work my way back there. But once I had it on the table, I was like, I don't know, there's something that says that maybe this other thing is where I need to be. And I
Yeah,
took a roll the dice on it.
yeah. No, for everyone listening right here, that's what we call courage. That's bravery because I still I'm like tiptoeing into that world because I'm just scared. I'm put it blunt, I'm scared. Like, and then you start having a kid and children, it's kind of like, oh, and you get really scared. But this is why I love this show so much, man, because that what you just went through makes so much sense about how I see you walking through life, dude. This is like, I mean, that I'm also admitting that I'm stalking, but that aside, like you can, it affirms how I see you operating and who you do and what you do and how you do it. So let me touch on a little bit, just on being a Black artist. How does that impact how you see art, not just poetry, just like art in general? How does that impact how you consume that?
It's there's a gift and a curse to it. I think the gift is that I've there's so much, and I'm still sifting through. There's so much to learn about our artistic legacy and tradition. Um, just here, not to mention globally, but there's so much to learn. And it wasn't until I was a full practicing artist that I realized how little I knew.
Mm.
Um, I had what I had experienced, and I had what my family and all of us have that story of the music we heard in the house and the things we get introduced to, but there was still so much I didn't know. Um, and part of that is the Black experience, right? Because you got to search to find, because nobody's lifting that up for us.
Mm.
Um, and even still, like, I'm gonna be completely honest, I went to an HBCU. I went to two HBCUs because I parted my way out of the first one, but I went to two HBCUs, and I got it. There was a lot I gained, but also still a lot that I later expected to be present and like front and center that wasn't. Um, so I had to still hunt and find, but the curse of it is that in doing so, I like really settled in to like my identity as a Black artist and then as a Black Southern artist,
Mm.
because having to go on that hunt and then also the experiences I was having at the same time made me be like, okay, I see how I got to show up, because I really I see how this beauty has been treated, but also now I'm really it's helping me understand some of the things I didn't really pay attention to and like how I'm being treated. So
Mm.
okay, I got a clear sense of the tradition and lineage I walk in. I have a clear way to articulate my art, because one of the things for us, folks try to act like we don't really know what we're doing,
Mm.
and why we doing it, and who we doing it in lineage of. Oh, I know that. So now we gonna I got to show up a little differently because I see what y'all doing.
Yeah.
So, and you can't stop seeing it once you pick up on it. And then, of course, like we were saying, when you start to have to also then traverse rooms and folks who feel like they know art are completely clueless,
Yeah.
then you really have to kind of think about you don't get a chance to not think about your Blackness and Black art in general as you're having these larger art and cultural conversations. Like you don't get to set it aside. So and then one last thing was also getting to a point where I also came to understand that Blackness in Black art was a choice. Like the
Mm.
first time I ended up in a conversation where there were some elders who were like, yo, like not everybody who is Black sees themselves within as Black or within that Black tradition, right?
Right.
Like that dynamic of Black and African American, like that was a real tension for some of our predecessors, right? Especially during the period of time where Black art was being framed, Black arts movement, like when was Blackness and Black art was being framed in a particular way, there were folks who were not with that. So then carrying that, like, what am I saying when I call myself a Black artist, and do I understand how that's being received even in my community? So yeah, it was a real learning experience, man, to like to go on, commit to this and go on this journey when you want to learn, because
Mm.
there are some folks who go on the journey and don't really want to learn, and they're oblivious, and sometimes, ignorance is bliss. But for me, I wanted to know, and I was curious, and it meant having to kind of really sit and reconcile some things, and then figure out how that meant I wanted to move.
Do you feel that as a Southern, specifically as a Southern Black artist, an added weight? Because I mean, when you think of like the Harlem Renaissance, when you think of all of that stuff, that's where it all they don't move from the South to these other areas. And these movements became movements. Is there any like extra heavy that you take on?
Yeah, and um, I yes, and I wear it proudly now. I tell everyone that I when I was eight, when art grew up in a working class family, man. Art is the first time I traveled, other than college spring break trips. Like, the
Right.
first time I really got to start to see the rest of the country was as an artist, going to go do gigs, or going to go to a festival, or going to go, meet, and so, and that's when I started to realize how folks saw the South, even amongst poets. And
Yes.
then it was like, oh, word. Okay. Well, then now when I show up, yes, I'm Black. Yes, I'm Southern. And that's what let's go ahead and start there. And so, um, and then once you're starting to kind of, for me, I also, at the same time that I committed to going to spots and kind of making myself available, some of the elder organizers and freedom fighters in the community were looking for young folks and kind of mentoring us and ushering us into understanding how to do work. And so there's another level of like understanding, like, race and class and all of these things that was happening for me at the same time. And so I'm like extra hypersensitive about the South in that regard. Because in larger movements, larger social movements, there's still a lot of blame on the South, and a lot of disregard, because some folks would love for us to go away so we wouldn't have to reconcile some of these issues.
Okay.
And then most of the Black folks are still in the South. And so, there's this belief that, like, as long as we here, we still got to have these conversations. And it's like, yeah.
Mhm.
And so the Southern experience, sometimes folks are like, oh, here come the Southern folks. And I'm like, yeah, so you're going to have to hear about these things you would like to otherwise
Yeah.
forget.
Right. Right.
From. Deal
But
with it.
yeah, yeah. But oh, by the way, that's where it came from. So it's such a dichotomy to me. So I always wonder like when Southern artists walk into the room that there's this extra piece that they're carrying, as well. You talked about God, I could talk to you forever, man. You talked about hip hop. We talked about that influence that with Nasir Jones Fellowship. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how hip hop plays a role in your work.
So, I grew up with hip hop. Um, and so as hip hop was getting its footing, so was I. I was, coming of age, and, born in the 70s, coming of age in the 80s, and just kind of so it was a place where I kind of found identity. I found insight into the rest of the world. Like my mom had me at 16. So for my mom, it was like it was soul music. Like, that was the thing that was popular in the house. That's where she found her way. Soul and gospel, because we Southern.
Right.
And so I had that, but that was hers. And so, hip hop was mine. And so that became the palette. It was soul, gospel, and hip hop. Jazz was something I went to go claim and find out more about as an artist,
Mhm.
because I wanted to know that in terms of Blackness and Black music. So, but yeah, so it was that became my lens in the world. And it also kind of had a big impact on how I figured out how to write, as a poet, not really knowing what I was doing. Hip
Mm.
hop was what informed me and my stream of consciousness rants, which is what they were, my emotional stream of consciousness rants. But and it was my understanding of form. It was my original understanding of form and structure before I really knew, other than what we got taught every year during the poetry lesson in English.
Truly.
Um, so like that became my frame of reference, man. And then it was, and then my curiosity kind of led myself over to poetry, wanting to know, reading liner notes because we came up in a time where that was a thing, and
Right.
understanding samples and some of the musicians that played on records and the producers, and like that curiosity gave me a blueprint for how to study craft on the poetry side. And I tell my students, for me, it's also why my art isn't just inspired by just poets. Coming out of hip hop, like it's not, I'm just not immersing myself in reading all the poets. Like I study visual artists, I study Scott, the arts are my palette in terms of creation and craft for thinking about how I craft. Because I come from, like New York and Cali and the South and the Midwest all have a really distinct nature to their scenes and to the artists and the different backstories. And like coming out of a culture where it really is a smorgasbord and a buffet of things to learn and understand about your favorite artist. Like my friends used to get on me because I had a Chinel XL CD and they were like, what the hell is that? And they still to this day get on me because I was the first one on the over here to be on E40. And they were like, what are you listening to? So
Yeah.
like for me, even studying the craft of writing, it was, hip hop gave me the blueprint for how broad I wanted to study art as a way of kind of building my toolbox for how I write.
Yeah. That's so funny. I mean, there's so much you said in there, but one thing that kicked up for me is the liner notes. There's so much every time I go through life, and it's like there's these moments where I'm just like, wow, my daughter's not gonna get this. Right? Everything is so 30 seconds, Spotify, whatever the case may be. But you used to sit there with the CD thing and open it or an album and read this. And there's so much in there, to get you to the root of like, okay, now I'm going to listen to this thing. Or as you're listening to it, you're reading this thing. It's such a lost art, right? Such a lost art.
Unless they get into vinyl, they won't. One thing that I'm happy about how vinyl survived is that anyone who gets into buying vinyl can still get that feel, but that's become a hobbyist kind of thing to do. And
Yeah.
so, there is still something that exists, but not everybody's going to get a taste of it. And it's a shame, man. It's a shame.
It's if you're trying to be eclectic, then all of a sudden then you're into vinyl, you know what I mean? So, but however, we need to keep it out there, man. But
Mhm.
with the hip hop, of course, I'm gonna have to ask you who's your favorite rapper, but then I got categories. So
So,
who's the
favorite favorite rapper, actually, it's funny. My favorite rapper is Sean Price. Uh,
okay.
he is
Okay.
my favorite rapper. Um, so I always say, if you ask me my top five, that's different. But like my favorite rapper, Sean Price.
Oh, everything. That answer is everything. Song price all day. So then let me categories a little bit. Lyrically, who's your favorite?
Lyrically, ooh, that's a good one. I'm going to say it. Right, it changes.
Mhm.
It wafers back and forth, but right now I'm gonna have to give a nod to Black Thought.
Well, God, we right in the same list. All
Mhm.
right. So in the club, because there's some people like lyrically, and then other people that ain't really saying shit, but you gonna shake that ass in the club. So who's your favorite rapper for that?
In the club, that's a good one. I'm gonna go. Um, I'm gonna probably say there's a tie for in the club.
Mm.
Um, it's and that's Wheezy and Ross.
Okay. Okay. I get that. I get that. If there's a rapper you saw on the street that you crossed the street, if you saw them coming down the street.
Look, that's a really good one. Rapper, if I saw and I'm crossing the street, Um, I'm gonna say I'm crossing the street. I'm gonna say Kodak Black. Yeah, I'm crossing the street.
For multiple reasons that's a whole different BBB session.
Crossing the
A
street.
whole different session. And then the last one in this one is, what rapper would you recommend white folks to listen to? If they ask, okay, I want to get into rap music, who should I listen to?
Um, that's a really good question as well. I'm probably going, um, I was having this conversation. I'm probably going to recommend um J. Cole.
Oh, really?
Probably going to recommend J. Cole.
Why Cole?
The reason why is I think um Cole Cole represents enough, represents enough of the culture, but not too much of anything. Because I don't want, it can't be Drake because that white people are gonna go the wrong direction.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I think they want to lend themselves to Kendrick, but I feel like that sets them off in the wrong direction as well. Um, and I don't want them, like the first person that came to mind is Common, but no, because Common is very angry.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
right, musically, yes, because it's a broad palette.
Yeah.
He has a broad musical palette, but he's angry. And no, no, no.
And it's like this. Like
Yeah,
y'all need to get some of this
I
stuff.
need to get some. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we can't go too far anyway. And I think Cole has found a real way to kind of vacillate through that middle. In a
Yeah.
lot of ways, there's going to be some reckless talk. There's going to be some young angst. There's going
Right.
to be some really introspective moments. There's going to be I was having this conversation because my students, he keeps coming up. My students really resonate with him, and it's because he is really a blue collar MC,
Yeah.
and I think that you can start there and kind of and also considering the collaborations, you can start there and find your way to other artists. And I think that so that's probably my recommendation. I think also what comes to mind, um, and it's funny that those are it would have been Chance,
Mm.
but folks ran Chance away. I'm glad he's
Yep.
coming back. I've seen some new music, but folks didn't like Happy Chance and it kind of interrupted, just totally disrupted that run. I've
Yeah.
never seen anybody more chastised for being happy in my life. But otherwise, it would be because then you get also a spiritual element that you
Yeah.
get introduced to a chance while also getting all the collaborators, variety of music, um, variety of perspectives. Um, but yeah, they kind of disrupted Chance's run.
Yeah. Absolutely. Talk about cancel culture. Um, that is a great answer. I wouldn't have thought Cole, but for all of the reasons you mentioned, I changed my mind. So we're gonna get into you reading in just in a second. I've just got a couple more questions for you. Talk about introspective. If you could tell if you could tell yourself something 15 years ago, what would it be?
Mm,
On
man,
whatever subject.
um, you are who you think you are would be what I would say. Um, I don't say it out loud often, but whenever I get it, whenever I'm asked, I do say I don't have a chip on my shoulder. I have a boulder,
Right.
and I think it's benefited me in the way that I've worked, that it has equipped me to be able to maneuver in some ways, especially because I'm an introvert who has social anxiety with a very public profession. And like the ability to kind of network and schmooze and do all of that is not my thing, but I love people. And so the way that I work, the way I show up, and the way I treat and I treat people is how I built my reputation and is how I've gotten opportunities. So, but I invest and I work so hard because I was like, I've been beating back this idea that I'm not really who I am, and
Mhm.
and not who I say I am, and like that I'm not who I am, and I am. And out 15 years ago, I would have told me, "No, you are,"
Yeah.
because I would have saved myself a lot of time of trying to prove to myself in the world that I am. Um, it's a kind of nuanced thing because I
Yeah.
wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't of that moved that way.
Yeah.
But if that's but that's what I would say. I would say you are,
You
you are,
okay? Yeah.
and
That's what's up.
and just affirm that. Yep.
Again, anyone listening, especially if you're younger, these are jewels, right? So even if it's a matter of right now, you saying, okay, you are who you are, like take that moment to do so. Hear what this what this gentleman is telling you. What's one of the funniest moments that you can remember around poetry?
Um. Oh my goodness, there's been so many, but I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Which I haven't had a chance to tell this story anyway. So, not like widely.
Right.
Me, two other poets were in. This is a Knoxville, Tennessee story. We were in Knoxville, Tennessee. We had done a gig, and um, person who brought us to Tennessee, we were on our way to her house. Okay. Another poet was going to show us the way. So we stopped to get food. We see the homie pull up. He's like, "Where y'all are y'all headed over?" We were like, "Yeah, we headed over." He was like, "I know the way, follow me." Cool. We grab our food, follow him. Already I should have known because the place we were going was the dining room was closed. We're in the drive-through and we see him in the dining room. We're like, should know
Wait.
we're not. Okay. We follow, pull up, we get out the car, follow him in. The houses have a front, and in the back, they all have a, an additional building, storage room, workroom, whatever it is, and then a driveway. We follow him into the workroom because the way it's built is there's the workroom, like a small little garden area, and then the back door to the houses, and there's a row of houses. We follow him in. He looks. It's a bunch of woodworking stuff, and he's like, "Huh, I didn't know. I didn't know her husband did woodwork. We don't know. We don't think about it. We don't know about it. We're like, oh, okay, maybe that's what he does. Maybe he just got all these tools. Who knows? But this room is full of woodworking tools, benches, everything. Cool. It's late. We want to carry food. We walk, come out the door, walk over through the little courtyard, up to the back door, because this person is expecting us. Open the back door, walk into the kitchen. Right? Me, there's four of us now. Me and one homie. We set our food down on the kitchen counter. Other homie is right behind us. The person we followed walks out of the kitchen to the living room, walks back in and says, wrong house.
Y'all just up in some stranger's house about to eat some food.
So what's so funny is what's so funny is, and I don't want to make this about race, but I just have to in this case because it's extra. So it's three black folks and we're all four males, three black dudes and a Cuban. By the time the Cuban homie even recognizes what's going on, all of us black folks is out the back door. Right? Right? Like there's a thing that sets in like,
Yeah,
we're gone.
get
And he's
out.
still stuck. So then he finally realizes that he comes out. We run back through the little woodworking shed and out, get out the house and kind of go back down and stop. And he's like, man, My bad. I mean, they all look the same. It was the house next door.
Oh no. Oh no.
So we
That
finally get to where we're going, and we tell the story. She's like, "Oh, yeah, there's such and such," and they're older, right?
oh,
And they're older. It's older white couple, and we're just like, and it's Tennessee, like it's in the South, right?
okay.
Right? Like it ain't even about politics. Folks have guns.
Right, right,
It's
right.
boys downstairs in the South. We just went through a whole woodworking shed. We don't think there's guns in this house?
In a cabinet. Well, they got gun cabinets.
You think? Especially if the door's unlocked.
Right,
If you are in the South and the doors are unlocked, they got guns.
right.
Just tell anybody out there, if you're ever in the South, if the door is unlocked, okay, if folks do not lock their doors, they have guns.
Exactly. Because it is not a problem.
Not a problem. They're not worried. You know what I'm saying? You walk through that door if you want, you're not walking back out.
Dude, that could have ended quite different.
Man, oh my God. And what so happened, the other homie, man, even when we got back, he was sending us links. He had Google breaking and entering. We were like, bro, we made it out. Like we don't
Yeah, it's okay.
so
Don't
shook
trigger us
up.
anymore.
He had never had an experience like that before. He's like, he was so shook up, man. We all up in the wrong person's house. We had started to unpack food. We would get ready to settle in and wait for our folks to come down and greet us.
Open the refrigerator.
House.
Oh Lord, look. Well,
And he didn't realize until he walked into the living room and saw Pitt. He was just like, he just came back in like wrong house.
yeah.
We,
First of all, go through the front. Okay, let's not go through the back. First of all.
and then
Oh,
it clicks when he was like, I didn't know her husband was in the woodworking. That should have been the first flag.
especially if it's full of it. Like it didn't all get it last week. Look, I just say
So
these supposed to be lessons. Somehow these
listen,
supposed to be lessons.
another time I'll give you names because you know all the folks. But right now, that's the story.
I love it. I love it. All right, look, we're gonna let you get into your time. Um, I know you have two books. I don't know if you're reading from both of them, but um, A Brilliant Uncertain Rebellion and a Month of Sundays, A Journey Through Southern Black Christianity. For all the folks listening, there's links in the chat. Get these books, but I'm gonna get you on to your slot. One question before you go though. When you sat down to write any one of these books, did you have a specific audience in mind? Like, did you sit there and say, okay, I'm going to create this for this audience, or did that come after you sort of excavated the poems?
For both books, yeah. For A Brilliant Uncertain Rebellion, it was, because we were in the midst of the pandemic and the inspiration was Andre 3000's interview with Rick Rubin. We were all inside. And so that I thought about artists and I thought about Black artists particularly. And everything we've been talking about thus far was what that book was about because I saw all of it in Andre 3000's journey, the
Mm,
expectation, the doubt, the all of it, the courage to kind of draw the line and everything even to now with the new album, like all of that. So that was the audience. I feel like everybody else would get it, but for specifically, I wrote it for all of us
mm,
with the most recent full length, because that's a chapbook, the full length. It's the last in a series about Black life. And for this one, I knew I wanted it to write it for all of the folks. And it's Southern Christianity. So of course, it's for the South, but also for anyone who has grown up having to kind of just reconcile
mm,
faith and especially Christianity and whether you're Black or not, um, and sort of and it's rooted and the inspiration for my perspective on it is what's known as liberation theology, right? It's folks who are like, we got to figure out how to create some space within the faith, um, to tackle some things rather than being focused. Like it's, not prosperity gospel, but let's talk about liberation theology and how we can really, win liberation for all of us. And so what does that look like? So that those were the two audiences. Um, even with these books in this Black Life series, the first book, I just knew I needed to write it. And that I wrote that one while I was doing the fellowship. The second one was really intentional because it was my love letter to the South. And so from there, I'm in a place of just really, um, really thinking about what I want to put together when I put it together. And I did have audiences in mind.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right, I'm gonna leave the mic to you. You got like 15, 20 minutes or so. Don't hurt them too bad,
All
or
right.
hurt them if you want, whatever you need to do, brother. I'm looking forward to this. So the stage is yours.
Thank you. I'm going to start with this piece from A Brilliant Uncertain Rebellion. We're going to start there, and then we'll move to A Month of Sundays. And this piece right here is called Two Dope Boys at a Bus Stop. I saw a red dodgeball in an empty sand lot, and I wondered if it was a burial marker for the last bit of melanated, wide-eyed wonder not deemed worthy of compassion, understanding, or due process. I paid the boy at the bus stop $20 to use his imagination to dig as far as he could beneath the sand. Now he and I are both standing here at the lot wondering who we should airbrush on our t-shirts first. The city bus pulling up finally disrupted our morning. On the side of it was an ad for almond and soy milk. Funny how dark things are promoted as better for you when they are considered white performing. We both looked at the side of the bus and then at each other. I shook my head. I then noticed exactly everything that was going on and I wondered if I was standing here with change, unwrapping candy like I'm trying to resurrect someone's Black child, wondering if I spent a moment with God, wondering if what I just witnessed was prophecy, debating if it's true that for every life lost, another affirmation of the pain we are covered in is born. Also, um, in this book, because it's about an artist's journey and all the things that we deal with, I wanted to talk about life and relationships and expectations. Um, and so this is Hey Ya over there. I once believed I could love you close from a distance. Just knew I could protect the me you were waiting on by letting you have it out with the me who scheduled the appointment. When they say better late than never, they don't mention how clock ticks sound like your heart breaking slowly. Top of the hour looks like smoke rising from the rubble. Half past feels like digging through the landfill. Quarter till seems like I've made peace with the decay, made a bed out of the fragile of it all, laid to rest any idea of restoration. I may believe I was whole once, that there weren't parts of me missing. I smiled, caught, and devotion spackled the holes in who I be, at least to who you saw me try to be. Happy and attentive with co-conspirators. The plan was to rob you of any idea that there was more of my vulnerability tucked away for a rainy day. They call it a victimless crime when you don't know what's happening, and I don't know why I'm doing it, but the damage is the same. It's always the same. I try to believe in the idea that you'll kiss me moving company useless, that we can move and unpack these insecurities on our own, but we can't. So now I'm calling on God, you calling on your mama, and our hearts are calling for a home makeover. Difference is that yours is a rebuild. Mine is an intervention, a desperate attempt to address the way that I've hoarded every goodbye, every closed door in my heart. Love don't live there anymore because it was deemed uninhabitable. So now it resides in a loft apartment above my ears, trying to figure out what's worse, that my thoughts make noise through the night, or that the ground shook when you made my heartbeat quicken. I want you to believe in me. Loan me your optimism, just enough for the cleaning and repairs. I know it's a risky venue. I need you to believe it's worth the possible return on your investment. Real estate that can only appreciate in the way it values having you in my life. And so in this, I played with, some different forms and some different things. This is called, this is a rondeau, and it is called A Negro Speaks of Deuces. You making sad songs saying it hurt too much, revisiting this and that, talking about such and such. God tried to tell your ass the last time. You jumped in the devil's arms right after the last line, caught up in the fire you felt from her touch. But you mad at her effort after y'all chose to love Dutch, tugging at each other's clothes and shifty bodies, screwing like a clutch. You minding for your self-worth and her like it's something you gonna find and got the nerve to be making sad songs. Insecurities had you crippled, looking to her like a crutch. How could something that felt so right get so messed up this much? Negro, you chose the chaos, ignored all the signs, and tried to make her healing her responsibility. Is you out your damn mind? Now you blaming her, talking about you locked your heart in a hutch. You got yourself in that situation. Stop making sad songs. So um that was a really this chapbook was really important for me to work through because we were sitting inside, and I know every artist was just left reflecting when we couldn't be out and about and active, and just wasn't able to really kind of move and kind of hide. We had to really just sit. And virtual readings and things like that weren't the same, right? Because as soon as you turn the camera off or close your laptop, you sit with yourself again. So this was an exercise and sort of, this is a cathartic experience for me, um, to work through. And so the last piece I'm gonna read from this collection, one of the things that kind of really kind of stood out to me was all the Andre 3000 sightings. It was just wild because we really were in a period for a few years just waiting for the next picture, to see Andre pop up with his flute. And so this is called Life of Pan. Um, there's a quote: "I brought the flutes with me this time. Unleash the flutes on them, Guru." Jay-Z from Blueprint 2. Purpose is calling. Sounds like Sunday morning. Feels like a mass choir solo, like exactly what I was waiting on, like exactly what I needed to hear. Reminds me that I'm here for a reason. And there's a nigga playing a flute in the airport. Freedom is calling. Sounds like a Saturday afternoon. Feels like a family cookout, like in the midst of familiar is home. Like knowing we in this together is comfort. Reminds me I ain't in this alone. And there's a nigga playing a flute in the airport. The stage is calling. Sounds like a Friday night. Feels like a parking lot with the homies, like sitting on chariots, talking like gods, like Shawty flew in on a lightning bolt. Reminds us white people love us mythology for real. There's a nigga playing the flute in the airport. The mic is calling. Sounds like a Tuesday evening. Feels like mama saying, eat all your food. Like hard work turn cans into loaves and fish. Like ain't no miracle like magic made. Reminds me how full you can get off what's possible. Like, yo, there's a nigga playing the flute in the airport. It's boarding call. Sounds like Wednesday evening. Feels like a study in the word. Like ain't the answers been text on a page. Like interpretation changed lives. Reminds me of who I can reach with this gift. Like a nigga playing the flute in the airport. Um, so now with Month of Sundays was, a real intentional body of work. And the way that it works is that there's 31 pieces, which is a month, you know, and it's a month of Sundays. So each poem is a Sunday. Each piece starts with a scripture, and then the work seeks to recontextualize, expand, or deepen, the application of the piece of scripture. And part of it is to make room within the doctrine for everybody, including those that are often left out, ostracized, or marginalized by the doctrine. So, um, because there is no liberation without all of us. We can't win if all of us aren't able to be able to celebrate it. So in this, I learned the powerful thing about faith. The cover are my two grandmothers who are my models of faith. And we can have lots of ideological and theoretical conversations about religion and structured and organized religion. And I can have those conversations. I've sat and studied and sat with a lot of different walks of faith and folks of a lot of different walks of faith. But my chosen faith is the same faith that held my grandmothers together, because that's the only two people I've seen make miracles. So in that, then what does it mean to create space for all of me within my own faith and all of my beliefs around social justice and the way the world works? And after doing that for myself, On the other side of that journey, I decided to use my art to do that for others, and that's what this book is about. So let's take a look at some of the pieces. This is Black Cloud, Matthew 9:13. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but the sinners. When we hear thunder, don't it sound like Gabriel still trying to teach God how to use that MPC? Like angels laughing when he said that next album gonna be fire because we've been waiting on that reveal with biblical anticipation longer than we waited for Detox. When we hear gunshots, don't it sound like Job ab-living over a Marvin Gaye sample loop with the 808 of Lauren London's broken heart? Like Lucifer laughing at a life of opulence turned tragedy because we've been waiting on the proof that a contract hit can be more billboard than casket with as much delusion as believing prosperity can be gospel. When the shells hit the ground, when that rumble crosses the sky, don't it sound like a Morse-coded wonder of am I still relevant? Like sacrifices too often on earth as it is in heaven. I mean, is anybody still listening? I mean, when them skies open, do we dance like ain't no other freedom? I mean, when that beat drops, do we become overwrought with anxiety? Is it all marveled at but never understood, confused by but never interrogated, mad at but never reconciled? Does it sound like you ain't never gonna not remember me? Does it hurt like why does it gotta be this way? Then breaks you down like I bet you ain't even see it coming. And so there's a lot of different things that I wanted to kind of try to work through, and a lot of messages I wanted to deliver. This is art school dropouts. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has seized you except what is common to man, and God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear, but when you are tempted, he will provide a way out so that you can stand up under it. There are people who will try to break you and call it love. Look at the shards of you and claim themselves artists, tell you they can make you mosaic, make you collage, make you quilt, make you stained glass, make you beautiful. If you commit to their vision of who you really should be and ignore who they truly are. Um, and there are some moments that I wanted to make sure that we really got into. Um, with this work. So in that, this is art imitating faith. Hebrews 12:2. Let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I asked God for a miracle, was given a poem, told to be Christ-like in my artistry. I was treated exactly the same. So for the sake of my sanity, I disappear 3 days at a time. I tell them to prepare for the day I leave. Instead, they prefer to prepare for the day I return. I think that we all kind of understand um, what that kind of burden is. Um, so let me a few more, just a couple more. Um, this next is called The King and James. 2 Samuel 14:13. She replied, why don't you do as much for all the people of God as you have promised to do for me? You have convicted yourself in making this decision because you have refused to bring home your own banished son. Tammy saw Pastor at the corner store, asked him how his day was going. Blessed, he said. Asked him what he had planned for Sunday. A good word, he said. Asked him how James was doing. Silence. See, Pastor hadn't had a good word to say about the blessing God gave him since James came out. So now silence is the only response, head lowered in shame like he praying. When his head lifts, eyes watered, it's like God is trying to Noah the ignorance out of him and let him know that after the storm, there's a rainbow. Um, there is a mix of, really short nuggets and longer pieces in here. Narrative is a vehicle and a tool I use a lot as a way of being able just to kind of push our thinking. I know we can, we can argue, we can argue. We've been, socialized into playing devil's advocate. We've been socialized into positioning ourselves in opposition for the sake of a better conversation, not for the sake of a better solution. And we get lost in it. But one thing I know you cannot argue unless you are truly gone is the impact that things have in a person's life. And so when we can paint these images and tell these stories and really make it vivid and tangible and rooted, then it's, you know where you are and you know what you're dealing with, you know where people are. Um, and so, um, organizing methodology says to isolate the opposition and move the middle. And so in my art, what I seek to do is isolate the opposition and move the middle, by making sure that they are seen and heard, and that the difference in humanity in all of us is, there is no post-racial rhetoric. There is no, I respect, appreciate, and lift up difference, because it's the way that I can see us being able to create space for us to show up as whole people. And in that, I feel like that allows us the capacity to be able to resist all the noise around us. So this is called A Bug's Life. 2 Peter 1:4. Through these, he has given us very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature and escape the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. There is a blessing come sunrise when black cicadas, too often considered roaches, open their eyes, able to breathe, able to rise, able to face another day knowing they survived the still-told white supremacy that came at nightfall. And I think I'm going to one last piece. Um, and this was just one of those things. Anybody who has ever experienced, Easter dinner, a repast, or a cookout understands the nature of this next poem, especially if you're Black. And I do mean a cookout, not a barbecue. So, instructions for discipleship. Luke 11:10, for everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, it will be opened. You don't show up to a Black cookout unannounced. There better be somebody waiting for you to arrive. Upon being met at the door or just outside your car, your first mission is to identify the host of the party. Then there is a progression of grateful to be distributed: mama, big mama, daddy, and granddaddy, in that order. Remember, you are entering sacred space, hallowed ground, the last refuge from a world that believes Black joy a blasphemy. Those smiles are not manufactured for white gaze, they are real. That laughter is deep and guttural. That music has soul and feeling. The food was made with love. Even the dishes determined to the far table, a warning: every offering is welcome, even if uneaten. God makes no mistakes. It was the devil that brought that foolishness in here covered in foil. Don't find yourself exiled to the other side of the room. It is a lonely purgatory. You are a guest on probation. The first 30 minutes after intros is the most important. That is where you will be scrutinized by cousins, aunties, uncles, and family friends. The kids will taunt you. They like to toss toys to pit bulls around here. The significant others will try to save you. They know this gauntlet. Find them. Keep an eye on them. Any shake of the head is a signal to abort. Take the advice. It is better to look fool than ass. Here, celebration is a rebellion and a communion. On days like this, Big Mama's prayers are animated for all to see. You must learn the characters, know your role, and not drop the lines. You are just providing voiceover for the you they think they see. You have not put in enough time to be real yet. This is a choir. Get offered a solo, mess it up. You don't get to sing no more. This is a high stakes situation. This space is little Johnny graduating from preschool. Henry got a new job. Josetta having a baby. Lim Jr. got accepted to college. Tasha just turned old enough for shotguns and birth control. Ray Ray just turned old enough for peach fuzz. This is an interview and a revival. You a guest. Consider your plate as visitors pamphlet. Big Mama's recliner is altar when the call is made. You make sure to kneel there and confess your appreciation. Give yourself to her grace and hope for an invitation to return. Um, I think, because this is um, beautiful Black books, I think there's one more piece I think I want to read. Um, called Bookshelves and God Complexes. And I think this is the great way to end. Romans 12:2, do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test or to prove what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. They have turned bookshelves into cults of personality, secret handshakes, pledged allegiance, ritualistic compromise, and a gate-kept password. Claim that real estate gated community, membership only, set the standard sacrifice necessary to be seen as accepted. They have turned bookshelves into a bastion of bourgeois disillusionment, named its overseers a literary boule, named its accolades rite of passage, not acknowledgement of the breath and sweat put into crafting unnecessary mattering. They cannot do the same with a community's hands. They cannot do the same with a community's ears, not their hearts, not their souls. There are no confines to the possibility of that blessed assurance. They demand a humbling resembling a 40-year wait. A wilderness, they say, will teach you to appreciate the promised land. Call your pen to page, staff to a rock. If the water that flows is credited to anything other than the power they wield, then your atonement is a snide dismissal. But they cannot rewrite the people's faith in your words. They cannot deny the impact. They cannot dismiss the many you fed with a feast prepared with no more than pen and paper, cannot call it no less than miracle. For to witness it is to believe, is to know a great thing. So right we will, and what a good and pleasing will it is. Thank you.
Man, look, uh, the thing about this show is that, I only have a certain amount of time, so I don't get the chance to the breadth of your work is amazing. I always look at, you can judge a person by the people that surround that person. So when I look at the things that you do, the people you run with, Ty Allen, uh, for example, blues, all these folks that you're collaborating with, and big out to Ty and the work that he's doing with sample sale and the amazing sort of joining of people together, you know what I mean, under this sort of realm of music and art. And blues, who does so much in the community. You were mentioning before that you and blues were going to are going to get together and do something soon. So talk a little bit, just give us a little bit about like what you're doing with blues and how important collaborations are to you with
Yeah,
like-minded people.
man, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I do want to also shout out Ty. Two reasons. One, Ty was always on me because he told me I wrote my poems were too long. So these last two books have been an exploration in shorter poems. So I just want to say that real quick. Uh, but also, Ty was really a model for me deepening my relationship with live music. You know, I had for a long time segmented my hip hop self and my poet self. Um, and then me and Ty started to work together. And not only is he a poet, he's an amazing producer and jazz vocalist. And so that really kind of, we worked on a project together that really kind of put me in a position where I started to think a lot more. And so, now I'm, I play, I'm starting to rock a lot more with a band and do more things like that. So I really appreciate him for that, amongst other things. But collaboration has been so important because it gives you a chance to really push. We talked about this earlier. Um, for our art form, there's, at 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 its beginning, like your first entry point are readings and hidden poetry spots. Like that's what's available to you at the beginning. At least when we came up. Now, the social media is another place, and that's its own space as well. But we didn't have that. Chat rooms weren't. You dropping poems in chat rooms wasn't doing nothing for you. We were only doing that to get girls. Just to be honest, we was
Right,
only,
right.
um, but what collaboration was a way to be able to start to envision and think of projects that could get you beyond that. Um, Collaboration with visual artists. I remember being able to work with, there was a gallery who did an annual exhibit of putting artists together, and they featured these collaborations, these multidisciplinary collaborations, in a major exhibit every year. Like being a part of, And then when we start thinking about like creative placemaking and public art, like if not for collaborations, there would be no room for me to envision how I, as a writer, could be a part of some of these initiatives, right? Because you think of it's easy for a muralist to think about applying to plot art on a public property.
Mhm.
But as a writer, the only way that that makes sense is through collaboration, where I'm working with a visual artist to think how my words and the images live and how they might live on a bus on the side of a building. So, like, this thing, the larger performing arts world and theater, right? I think about folks like Mark Bamuthi Joseph and like what he's
Mm.
been able to do with the dance world and his words, and like, the work that folks have been able to do with orchestras. Our local symphony I've been able to collaborate with for the last few years, and it was a beautiful learning opportunity. So like collaboration has been one of those ways to just see my work have a bigger life and a vision and imagine bigger projects and bigger things for it. Because the reality is like I always say, most artists are independent artists. And that glimmer of like fame and notoriety is very like it's a narrow door to walk through.
Yes.
Most of us are not ever going to walk through that door. Regardless of even if the person next door or our homie gets to walk through it, that doesn't mean we're right behind them. So we got to figure out what else is there for our art. And these collaborations with other artists and also with a variety of different institutions and mediums and venues and platforms is how we can make sure that we're continuing to kind of grow in our art and also continue to reach new audiences. And so I value the people that I've had a chance to work with. Um, my playwriting grew because of a collaboration that was really about addressing health disparities in minority communities. And I got funding to craft these productions that helped me tighten my craft on the playwriting side, which now leads to me getting funded to put up my own show. Like, this is the way we navigate. Like, we gotta, for us to also be able to pay our bills while we're growing,
Hustle.
it's through collaboration.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, man. And I do appreciate that because it is sort of like this individual, I feel like this individual journey that we get on and off of other people's buses. You know what I mean? And but you bring all those things back to you and take with you as you go. So you're right, because there are some people that make it through that small vantage point that is fame. And let's be honest, some of them people ain't as good as you. So I'm just saying. So
Mhm.
that you have to reconcile with, I think as well. Um, so there's before I get into another question, I give my people sometimes homework assignments, right? There's a poem that this brother does to do with spiders. Find it and listen to it. It is amazing. Um, I think there's also a piece that I came across, an animated piece that you did, and I couldn't find it. So I don't know if it's back on your Instagram or your Facebook, but folks go find it. I forget do you remember the name of that? What's the name of that poem?
Um, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but there are.
Line art. A lot of it is just line art, and then
Oh, yes. Okay, so yeah, you can find it on my YouTube page. I just released in the last year, I released a 3-song spoken word EP, and I've been releasing. I had animated lyric videos done for each piece, and so they're on my YouTube page. You can find them. Mistake, Medusa, and Ant are the three
yes,
points. And
and
so,
ooh,
yeah, look, that Ant piece, I'm gonna say this to you so if you can see if you got so when I heard the track, the first thing that came to mind was Spike Lee. Like I saw that. And that's the reason why I wrote the piece that I wrote was because that's what I envisioned. And I wanted to write the movie that moved. And Spike Lee was that was the inspiration. So I
so
wanted to do that because I know you can
it came across. It so came across. I was just taken with it the whole time. And so folks, please find that work. It gives you a sort of another perspective into the vastness of this gentleman's work. Question for you. So now you got three people in the elevator. You stuck in the elevator for 3 hours. Who are those people? Past. You get three people to choose from, past or present.
Mm-mm. Um, let's see. Dick Gregory,
Mhm.
uh, Bell Hooks, Scarface.
So why Scarface?
The 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 reason why is one, he's one of my favorite artists of all time, but it's the breadth of artistry and understanding. Like
Mhm.
I know why those other two folks are there for me, but I want to ground it in art. And I think the person that can have that conversation with those two elders and not feel out of place and grounded is Scarface. Because that's going to be one of them good old black converse. That's one of them good old black real conversations. They're gonna all be able to talk truth and shoot shit. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And transition. That's a great curation. What's if there was a bucket list audience that you ever thought of, like what's your bucket list audience to perform your work in front of?
Ooh, great question. Um, Bucket list audience. I think that my bucket list audience is um folks who are folks, I don't want to extend it too far, but I say 40 to 55.
Mm,
You know what I'm saying? Like them 70s, like them 80s babies,
right,
80s.
right.
Give me them
Yeah,
80s. They're not 80s, not born in the 80s, but them growing up in the 80s
yeah,
babies.
yeah,
Give me them because folks older can work, in terms of understanding the breadth of the work and not just understanding it, but being able to like really like rest settle in it. I could probably go to 35, but like that 40 to 55, they can go on the whole ride with me over the
yeah,
time of the set. And not only get everything, but feel like they are with me. They experience the moments. They know like I can talk to them and we can ride that together. So you give me a room full of folks in that age group, and they can bring anybody with them, but like give me a room of them.
yeah.
We gonna have a good the energy I'm gonna get back from them. We gonna make a moment.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because I think we put so much of ourselves in our work, and ourselves, of course, are on timelines. You know what I mean? So it's like I'll do poems and I'll say something, and I realize, wow, that's not pop culture. That's not like in the know anymore. And it's like, but it's we don't have to translate. That's what comes to mind. It's like there's no translation. You could just say an image and folks get it because they were there. You know. Someone said something the other day. I said, "Yeah, you came a long way, like Virginia Slims," and they were like, I'm not from Virginia." And what do you mean? And I was like, you remember that ad? And they're like, no. So it's like, okay, conversation ended.
Yeah.
Okay. You know? So we got a couple minutes left. I do have I have what I call my quick fire round that we're gonna go through. But right before that, I would love to ask one last question before we go into the quick fire is um if because we talked about two books here. So you got a little bit of harder challenge here. If any one of these books was an actor or a musician, who would they be?
Hmm. I think that if if a brilliant uncertain rebellion was, it was an actor or who?
Or a musician.
Actor or musician. I would think that a brilliant uncertain rebellion, I mean, of course, it's inspired by Andre 3000, but um, what I think in terms of a musician, I would say, uh, what that's. I say Pharrell Williams. And
Okay.
I think that a month of Sundays, if it was an actor or a musician, I would say um I think that it would be, I'd say um oh my goodness, Don Cheadle.
Wow. Okay. All right. I get that. I get that. All right. And then the last part of this is a quick fire round. I'm going to say some words, and then you just whatever first comes to your mind, whatever word first comes to your mind after I say it, that's the answer.
Okay,
Or two words.
gotcha.
Uh, Starting now. Poetry,
Life,
graffiti,
vision,
art,
breath,
language,
hope,
blood,
steel,
uh, barbecue,
family,
slam poetry,
game,
blues,
south,
blues with a Z,
homie,
love,
necessary,
J Electronica,
brilliant.
Obama,
Yeah,
South Carolina,
Lord Jesus,
North Carolina,
home,
Andre Three Stacks,
God,
father,
work in progress.
Kanye West, religion. I get it. I get it. My last one for you is laughter.
Necessary.
Wonderful. Look, brother, it has been amazing. We could do 2, 3 more hours of this. I love talking to you. I love getting behind some of, like I said, the what I love about this show is really, especially with folks that I already know, is seeing how I've seen them walk in the world all these years, but then finally get to actually chat and talk about origin stories and sort of how you think, what moves you. And this has been a blessing for you to sit here and spend time with me and share this space. So thank you very much for being here, people. Go find this brother. Your life will be better for it. But yeah, man, thank you. I'll let you get back to the rest of your weekend. Again, you deserve all the flowers you have gotten and that you have refused.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that, man. It's been a pleasure. Always, always dope to chop it up with you.
Absolutely, man. I'll see you next week, right?